She blamed me for everything: stolen money, broken trust, a ruined career, and everyone believed her. I lost my job, my friends, my reputation. But while she celebrated my downfall, I was collecting proof, quietly, patiently. Now it's my turn to speak, and the world will listen. The day it all burned down didn't start with fire. It started with silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind you savor. This silence was thick, unnatural. A stillness that pressed against my chest the moment I stepped into the office. Normally there'd be a hum, keyboards clacking, phones ringing, someone yelling about lunch orders from the break room. But that morning, it felt like the building had stopped breathing. I knew something was wrong before I even reached my desk. No one met my eyes. Even Jenna, the usually chatty intern who once cornered me for 20 minutes about her cat's birthday party, pretended not to see me. Then came the message. Please come to HR immediately. 5 words. No punctuation. No smiley face from Caroline like usual. Just a sentence that knocked the breath out of me. I walked like I was being led to execution. My heart thudded with every step. I couldn't explain it, but my instincts screamed. Caroline didn't even look up when I walked in. She just nodded toward the corner office where Greg sat, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Sit, he said. I sat. He clicked a button on his keyboard and turned his monitor toward me. An email was open, from my account. I read it once, then again. It felt like someone had reached inside me and yanked the air from my lungs. The message detailed a transfer of funds. Large, unapproved. The tone was flippant. The kind of arrogance I hated in others, the kind I never used. I didn't write this, I said. My voice cracked. Greg didn't blink. It was sent from your account, on your work laptop, from your IP address. But I didn't. The board has already been notified. I stared at him, stunned. What are you saying? He sighed, leaned forward. Like he was tired. Like I had disappointed him. You're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Greg, please. I didn't do this. Someone framed me. I swear to God. He stood, walked to the door. Your severance package will be mailed. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Harder for who? 2 security guards waited outside. They didn't touch me, but their presence was enough. I walked out in a daze. Past Jenna, who now looked like she wanted to crawl under her desk. Past Dan, who had once drunkenly told me, at a happy hour, that I was the only reason the nonprofit hadn't crumbled. He didn't look at me, but she did. Marissa, my best friend, my co-founder. The person who knew every password, every board member's soft spot, every secret we ever shared in whispered office corners. She was standing by the printer, a coffee cup in hand, like nothing was happening. When our eyes met, she gave me the smallest shake of her head. Sympathy, maybe. Maybe. That night, I sat on the floor of my 1-bedroom apartment, my laptop open, searching my name. And there it was. Former nonprofit. Director allegedly embezzled $150,000 in donor funds. My photo. A screenshot of the email. No mention of Marissa. But then I found her Instagram. A picture of the office. A caption about surviving betrayal. Hashtags about resilience. A link to a GoFundMe. I clicked it. She had raised $10,000 for the nonprofit in 2 hours. I wanted to throw my laptop. I wanted to scream. But all I did was sit there, staring. The betrayal hadn't fully landed yet. It hovered, fog-like, around the edges of my brain. My hands shook. My skin felt too tight. I picked up my phone. Called her. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Blocked. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying the moment we started the nonprofit. 2 idealistic 20-somethings, passionate about food justice. I remembered the night we made our first grant. The tears in her eyes when we hit our fundraising goal. The way she hugged me like I was her sister. How long had she been planning this? By morning, I was trending locally. Someone had found old college photos. Memes were being made. Comments flooded my inbox. Thief. Trash. She should be in jail. My landlord taped an eviction notice to my door. My bank account was frozen. My boyfriend of 2 years sent a text. I can't be part of this. I'm sorry. Gone. I was completely, utterly alone. The only person who hadn't turned on me yet was the voice inside my own head. And even she was starting to ask, what if you were wrong to trust her? What if the signs were there the whole time? What if she never saw you as a partner, just a stepping stone? I sat in my darkened apartment, the shades drawn, the walls closing in, and pulled up her podcast interview. She sounded composed, perfect. It's devastating, she said, voice catching. You think you know someone. You think you can build something together, but I guess we never really know what people are capable of. The host clucked in sympathy, called her brave. I pressed pause. Then I whispered it aloud, just to hear how it sounded. I think she planned this. The words hung there. My voice didn't tremble. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The grief didn't go away, the panic didn't disappear, but something new moved beneath it. A quiet, slow burning flame. She thought I would crumble, but I wasn't done, not even close. There is a silence that swells when the world stops holding you. I discovered it on day 3, curled on my cousin's couch. The cushions were flat, the fabric rough against my cheek, the blanket smelled faintly of dog and leftover pizza. The streetlight outside cast a harsh, unending glow that stole any hope for sleep. Nights bled into days, and during each stretch, the absence of sound from everyone else felt like a physical force pressing down on me. I texted Marissa again that morning. Just 3 words. Can we talk? The little blue checkmark flickered on. Delivered. No read receipt, no reply. By noon, I realized I'd been blocked. No calls, no emails, no nothing. That empty space where she had been felt worse than the job loss. Maybe it was the reminder that this was no accident. This wasn't a mistake. This was carefully orchestrated. Because friends don't block you on all accounts at once. They reach out. They cry. But she did none of that. She vanished. A new notification popped up on my phone. Marissa's name on a podcast. How I Survived Internal Sabotage. At my own nonprofit. I'd heard she was doing interviews, but seeing it stared me in the face. I tapped the link with shaky fingers, even though I knew everything it would say. It was someone I trusted. That's what made it so hard. Her voice, trembling in all the right places, so measured it seemed rehearsed. You never think your own team could turn on you. But I guess power changes people. Power. It sounded like a confession and a lie at once. She spoke of me in past tense as if I were already gone. She claimed I'd siphoned off money, hidden transfers, lied to donors for months. How she reluctantly discovered the whole scheme. Talked about the sleepless nights. The calls to board members at 2 a.m. The tears behind closed doors. And again, tears. I just couldn't stop crying, of course. Every word was a carefully pointed arrow through me. I was the villain in her story. The perfect scandal headline. And who would suspect the woman holding the mic wasn't the victim? When the host praised her bravery, I nearly puked. Social media feeds overflowed with sympathy, condemnations for me, calls for justice for her. Some said, "Go, Senator," as if that would be her next step. My name, my hometown, my face. They plastered it all without a shred of nuance or doubt. Even my own sister at one point asked if I ever thought, what if she's telling the truth? On day 4, I packed up mental boxes of memories, college, grants, late-night brainstorming sessions, those timid first donor calls. I forced myself to scroll through old WhatsApp threads, her sick texts when I had pneumonia, the midnight brainstorming voice notes for our first campaign launch, the shared password lists I had typed out so she could log in to grant documents. Some old photos showed us standing under a fundraising banner, arms uplifted, naive grins plastered on our faces. I forced a smile then, but now it felt like I was staring at someone else. Because that version of us, bright, earnest, ambitious, felt like a lie. I drove to the office one night just to feel the grinding ache of absence. The lights were out, but I could see the new sign, Changemakers Foundation. The old name Hope Rise was gone. The logo was new, crisp, more polished, and so unfamiliar. I pressed my forehead to the glass door and thought about the times I'd stayed late, entering my password so she could review final documents. That was her last night in the building before it all blew up. Through the faint glow from the conference room, I spotted a group of interns huddled around a table. They were laughing. Someone had made a joke, maybe about coffee gone cold. I didn't know. But when one of them pizza-faced, fresh out of school, looked up, I saw recognition flash in their eyes. They snapped my photo before I bowed my head and walked away. By morning, that photo was already trending. The caption, "Guess who's back at the scene of the crime?" Replies were brutal. "Lock her up." Sociopath vibes. When will the arrest happen? No context, no explanation, just rage and finger-pointing. I reached out to my cousin, but he stopped me. "We've talked about this. Let it go." My head, though. I needed to see. I needed to feel the cold sting of their words, press it onto my face, and remember it wasn't real, even if it felt like pins and needles. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. Eviction notice filed. My landlord didn't leave a message, just an email stating that he could no longer allow someone under investigation to live in his building. I stared at the screen for so long, I forgot to breathe. My lungs ached. The walls felt close, like they were folding in on me. So I did what I almost never do. I cried. Quietly at first. A slow leak. Then, full breakdown. This time, no anger or adrenaline, just exhaustion and grief. My cousin returned home with some takeout and a six-pack, our compromise between, let's talk about this, and we can't talk about that. We sat on the couch, eating, drinking, and watching reruns of some mindless sitcom we'd loved as kids. Midway through the second episode, I felt myself harden. I think she planned this, I said softly. He paused the show. Marissa? I nodded, voice hollow. Every part of it, from the email to the evidence dump, to now making me public enemy number one. She built this from scratch. He didn't say anything. Maybe he felt it too. I looked at him. What can I do? He met my eyes. Tell your truth, I shrugged. Felt empty. I don't have one, I admitted. Only a bunch of shaken memories and a plate full of doubt. He shook his head. No, you have the truth. You lived it. But I wasn't sure anymore what truth even meant. My account was frozen. I had no statement, no platform, no voice. There was only guilt by accusation, and she held the mic. And yet, something stirred within me. The impulses of survival. What else have I got? So I started collecting pieces. Not like some big investigator. No spreadsheets or subpoenas yet. Just scraps. A version of the anonymous email I received, saved somewhere on my old laptop that was miraculously not wiped. Memories of passwords she typed to access donor docs. First pet plus. Birth year. Text threads we shared when she was pitching to the board. How she once copied my customer list, word for word. I scribbled notes in a tiny notebook. That night she said she was going to meet a networking contact at 9 p.m. That was the night the transfer was recorded. Details. I vowed to hold close. But I didn't tell anyone, not my cousin, not my mother, not even my therapist, because I didn't even trust myself to say it yet. The world had swallowed my side whole. It pulled me under, stripped me of context, flattened me into a single, horrifying label. And I was drowning. One night, half drunk and exhausted, I Googled Marissa nonprofit sabotage. I clicked through dozens of articles quoting her, terms like internal crisis, betrayal, cool-headed leadership. Not one of those pieces mentioned me by name. They didn't even ask for comment. I closed the browser, phone in my lap. I stared at the ceiling, at the scanner of a smoke alarm blinking red, thought about the warmth I used to feel in her presence. That warmth was gone. I could almost feel it like a phantom limb. It left behind cold. I woke up on day 5 with a new ache. Not physical, mental, but sharp and insistent. Every time I blinked, I saw those headlines. I heard that podcast. I felt my landlord's rejection. I heard the whispers of, what if she planned it? I lay motionless for a while, just counting breaths. 10, 20, 100. Eventually, I lifted my phone and typed into Google. Is it illegal to hack back? I didn't press enter. But that single keystroke told me something important. I wasn't done. That afternoon, I walked into a coffee shop with purpose, my old makeshift office when the real one was too chaotic. Baristas remembered me, but frowned before saying hello. I sat in the corner, opened a blank doc, and titled it, My Version. Then I started to type. Not the big proof, not the scathing expose. Just the opening scene. I still remember the first time she brought me soup. I was sick. Remember the color of the tile in my apartment, how she stayed until I'd eaten 2 bites, asked me how I was feeling. I remember because that moment still felt real, like she wasn't just playing a role yet. It was shaky. It was human. I wrote until the cafe lights buzzed, until my stomach growled, until I had no words left. When I closed my laptop, I felt something I hadn't felt in a while, a spark. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was anger, or both, but it was enough, because I realized it didn't need to be instant or explosive. Maybe it just needed to exist. Maybe truth didn't have to compete with her story if it was built slowly, deliberately, piece by piece. And maybe, just maybe, it could still land. It started with a DM. Not a grand revelation or a lightning bolt moment. Just a blinking red notification at the top of my burner Instagram account. The one I'd created under a fake name just to lurk. Hey, you don't know me, but I used to intern for changemakers. I don't know what's true or not, but some stuff felt off. If you want to talk, I'm here. I reread the message 10 times. I didn't know whether to feel relief or panic. I stared. At the sender's profile, barely any posts. Private account. No identifying info. They could have been anyone. But they weren't Marissa. And they weren't calling me a thief. So I answered, yes, please, let's talk. We met virtually, burner Zoom link, no real names. The intern wouldn't even turn on their camera. But their voice, it shook with something real. They told me how, 3 weeks before my firing, Marissa suddenly upgraded her car. Not flashy, they said, but way beyond a nonprofit director's budget. A week later, she paid off a chunk of her mortgage. She said it was family money, they whispered, but we all knew it wasn't. Then they dropped the line that truly cracked something inside me. She always made a point to say your name in meetings, like, loud. Every time anything weird happened, she'd say, we need to check if my name touched that file. Like she was planting the seed. And apparently, I was the only one who ever got locked out of our internal server. IT said it was a glitch, the intern added, but now I don't know. When the call ended, I sat still. Completely still. It was real. I wasn't paranoid. This wasn't some tragic misunderstanding. She'd planned it. Every step. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened an old hard drive I'd kept from college, one that somehow missed the great digital purge when they seized my devices. It had backups of everything: old board presentations, marketing materials, even folders I'd forgotten existed. And in one, buried under layers of archived junk, I found something gold: a metadata trail. Buried in the PDF files, Marissa claimed I sent bank transfer slips. Donor communications were date stamps that didn't line up. Several had been created after I'd been locked out of the server. Worse, some were digitally signed using my email, but the login locations traced back to her neighborhood. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. This wasn't suspicion anymore. It was evidence. I felt lightheaded, elated, then sick. Because if I was right, she'd forged legal documents. She hadn't just scapegoated me, she'd committed fraud. And everyone bought it. I tried her old password, first pet's name plus birth year. It worked. Her Dropbox opened like a gift-wrapped confession. Inside, folders labeled Narrative, Boardcom, and my favorite backup plans. Emails she drafted pretending to be me, full of confessions she never sent. Letters to the board outlining concerns about my behavior. Even media scripts, full-blown interview templates she used on podcasts. And a spreadsheet of donor payouts, including a $20,000 miscellaneous operations fee, dated the day after I was fired. It had her signature. I could have screamed. Instead, I just whispered, "I've got you." But this wasn't a courtroom. I wasn't a prosecutor. Just a woman with a wrecked life and a handful of proof that no one had asked. 4. So I changed the game. I created a fake Gmail, built a LinkedIn persona producer at a trendy new true crime podcast. I wrote her a glowing email. "Hi Marissa. We're huge fans of your story and think it could inspire so many. Would love to interview you and hear more of your journey." "Overcoming betrayal," she replied in 10 minutes. Her ego did half the work for me. We set a date. I played it soft, interested, innocent. I asked her for a timeline just to prep the questions. She sent over a neatly typed Word doc titled Sequence of Events, and it was full of holes. She claimed she discovered the financial breach on a Friday night, while her calendar showed she was on a flight. She said I'd confessed via Slack message, a Slack I'd been banned from. She lied, repeatedly, in writing. I screen captured everything. My laptop started to look like a detective's wall of red string. But still, I needed to do more than prove she lied. I needed to make her feel what I'd felt. That slow decay, the tension, the silence. So I emailed the board anonymously. "Burner account, no names, just the truth. You believed a liar. Here's your proof." Attached, the Dropbox. Metadata. Voice recordings. A link to her interview timeline next to travel receipts. Then I waited. Silence at first. Then noise. Her social media locked down within 24 hours. Her LinkedIn disappeared. One of the board members posted a vague tweet about being misled. Another left the organization entirely. An intern messaged me anonymously, "Whatever you did, it's working." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow, numb. Because for the first time, she was crumbling and no one even knew I was behind it. But I wasn't finished. I wanted the mic. Not just for revenge. For the truth. So I pitched myself my real story to a rising journalist known for her viral exposés. She agreed to meet. I brought everything: the files, the timeline, the podcast clips. I told her how my life had imploded, how I'd been painted a monster, how Marissa had risen like a phoenix. On bones, she broke herself. The journalist didn't say much, just listened, took notes. When I left the cafe, my legs shook so hard I had to sit on the curb and breathe. 3 days later, a new headline hit. Whistleblower reveals nonprofit cover-up. Was the wrong woman blamed? My name was there. But this time, not as a thief, as a survivor. My phone exploded. Not just with sympathy, but with apologies. My old manager emailed. So did the intern who once took my photo outside the office. I ignored them all, because this wasn't over. Not yet. Marissa released a statement claiming the files were doctored. She doubled down on her innocence. But I wasn't worried, because truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to be heard once. And now, finally, they were listening. The thing about being painted a villain is, eventually, you stop scrubbing the blood off your name. You start wearing it. Not because you believe it, but because it gives you power. She wanted me to look like the saboteur? Fine. Let me show her what sabotage actually looks like. It started with the burner account, not the one I used to message the intern. This was new, slicker. I built a fake identity down to the zip code, a fake persona with a backstory: podcast producer, former nonprofit analyst, fluent in buzzwords and empathy. I reached out to her again, this time from a new angle. I work with a network that specializes in whistleblower narratives, I wrote. We're preparing a long-form documentary on women navigating betrayal in leadership. We'd love to center your voice. She was all in. Of course she was. That was her drug now, visibility. We scheduled a pre-interview. I asked all the questions a real journalist might ask. Let her monologue. Let her lie. But every time she said something false, I led her a little deeper into the trap. Wait, so you were the one who discovered the breach? Yes, totally by accident. Were you able to track the transfers yourself? Well, yes, I used our system's internal filters, but only after weeks of suspicion. And that was before the board knew anything? Way before. I had to go to them. Every response contradicted her previous timeline. I recorded everything. I turned her ego into evidence. After the call, I didn't sleep. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, adrenaline seeping from my skin like sweat. She was so confident, so sure of herself, so untouchable. She had no idea I was the person behind the whistleblower folder. The one who had sent the board her Dropbox files, who had dissected her script and laid bare her lies. I was her ghost now. I uploaded the recording to an encrypted server and labeled it Marissa Full Interview Lees.wave just in case. The next step was visibility. I emailed the journalist again, the one who ran the first headline on me being framed. She was hungry for more. I told her about the interview, offered a transcript, even hinted that Marissa had knowingly lied under oath to the board. She wrote back within the hour, "If what you're saying is true, this is explosive, but we need her on record." She wanted to confront Marissa herself. I told her to. Wait, because I wasn't done building the fire, I started leaking the truth. Strategically, slowly, a screenshot here, a voice clip there, a single tweet from a burner account. Nonprofit leadership isn't always what it seems. What if the victim isn't who you think? The replies rolled in, some defensive, some curious, some furious. Marissa, meanwhile, kept talking, kept posting. She couldn't help herself. She was addicted to the narrative she built, and like any addict, she couldn't see she was circling the drain. Then I pulled the pin. I created a blog, anonymous, titled, "She Stole My Story." The homepage was simple. One sentence. What happens when your best friend frames you to become famous? I published the timeline, not the dry, legal one. My version. The sleepless nights, the job loss, the couch, the podcast, the betrayal, the evidence, and at the end, links, screenshots, files. I didn't name her directly. I didn't have to. She knew, and so did everyone else. Within 48 hours, it had 300,000 views. News outlets reached out. Reddit exploded. Twitter trended. Some called it cancel culture. Others called it justice. Marissa? She posted a shaky video from her living room. No makeup. Bad lighting. The usual, "I'm heartbroken" aesthetic. She said, "I never meant to hurt anyone. I just wanted to protect the mission." She said, "We all make mistakes." She said, "This is a misunderstanding that's gotten out of hand." But her voice cracked at the wrong moments. Her eyes darted. Her smile vanished, because she knew the next wave was coming. The board released a statement, vague, cautious, but it hinted at an internal review. Donors started pulling funds. A new hashtag appeared, Hope Risleys. She stopped posting, stopped answering emails. Someone leaked a resignation letter. It was 3 paragraphs of deflection. She didn't apologize, not once. And yet, I still didn't feel whole, because this wasn't about the scandal anymore. It was about what she took, not just my reputation, my job, my safety. She stole my story. She turned my kindness into ammunition, my trust into currency. She didn't just burn me down. She built herself from my ashes. So now I wanted to rewrite that, not just expose her, replace her. I sent one last email, to her personal address. The subject line, "You made me your villain. I accepted the role." Inside, "I hope you're watching. I hope you finally understand what it feels like to be erased, to be doubted, to scream into silence. You taught me how to fight dirty. I'm just better at it. No signature, just closure." Or something like it. And as I sat back in my chair, watching the internet debate her fall from grace, a strange calm washed over me. Not joy, not vengeance, just clarity. She had tried to turn me into the villain of her story, so I became it, but in mine. And now, mine was the one they were reading. It wasn't revenge I wanted anymore. It was recognition. A public undoing, where she couldn't hide behind filters, apologies, or curated tears. Where the audience wasn't just pixels on a screen, but real, breathing witnesses. So I set the stage. The event was called Voices for Change, Leading Through Crisis. One of those nonprofit leadership panels where everyone wore power suits and swapped stories about resilience and integrity like they were cocktail recipes. And of course, Marissa was the keynote. The organizers had no idea what they were inviting. They just saw a viral survivor, a beloved former CEO, a headline maker. I didn't RSVP. I didn't need to. I already had a ticket courtesy of a journalist friend who owed me a favor. Front row. Seat C6. Walking into that auditorium felt like walking into a crime scene. Her face was everywhere on the event poster. on the rotating screen above the stage. That soft smile, those careful eyes. Like she still couldn't believe she was chosen for this spotlight. She wore a cream blazer, minimal makeup, hair in a neat bun, the uniform of humility and strength. I sat down, folded my hands, waited. When she walked out on stage, the applause was warm, familiar. She basked in it. "Thank you," she said into the mic. "I'm honored to share my story with all of you." Her voice was steady, her smile gentle. I felt my jaw tighten. For 30 minutes, she talked. About betrayal, about internal corruption, about the hard choice of stepping away to protect the mission, about what it meant to be a woman in power who had to make unpopular decisions. She even cried. It was all going according to script. Until the Q&A. The moderator opened the floor. "If you have a question, please raise your hand." My hand shot up. I watched her eyes skim the room, pause, then freeze. She recognized me. She paled, but she couldn't back out now. The moderator pointed to me. "Yes, front row." I stood, slowly, held the mic steady, and said, calmly, "Can you explain the Dropbox folder titled Narrative Control, specifically the PDF called Backup Confession Draft 3? The entire room shifted. A single inhale. Dozens of heads turned. Marissa blinked. I don't, sorry, who are you?" I didn't flinch. "I'm the woman you framed, the one you called a thief. The one who lost her life so you could build yours." A beat of silence, gasps, then chaos. The moderator tried to interject. "Let's keep this civil," I cut in. "You lied, on podcasts, in emails, to your board. You forged documents. You manipulated staff. You built an entire career off a narrative. You manufactured." Her hands were shaking now. She reached for the mic, stammering. "I don't know what you're talking about. These are very serious accusations. You wrote them." I pulled out a folder, handed it to the moderator. Inside, printed emails, transfer logs, the forged confessions, metadata timestamps. I didn't say another word. I let the paper speak. The room turned. Faces once nodding in sympathy now shifted to confusion, doubt. The moderator looked through the pages, eyes wide. Marissa was still standing but swaying now. One woman near the aisle whispered, "Oh my God." Another pulled out her phone. "The journalist who invited me?" Already tweeting. "Live from O Voices for Change. CEO accused of fabricating entire fraud scandal. Whistleblower confronts her receipts in hand." The ripple turned tidal. Security didn't escort me out. They escorted her. The panel was called off. I walked out the front doors into the crisp air. No one stopped me. No one had to. Because the moment already lived online. Clips of the confrontation spread like wildfire. People reposted it with captions like, "When the scapegoat takes the mic. This is how you fight back. Truth doesn't need PR." Some still defended her. Of course they did. But the tide had turned. I got a call the next morning. Unknown number. I picked up. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" I almost laughed, but I didn't. I just said, "You handed me the brush. I just painted the real picture," and hung up. The article dropped that afternoon. Headline: "Framed, Fired, Forgotten. The Woman Who Brought Down a Nonprofit CEO with Her Truth." Underneath, a subhead: "What happens when the woman you called sisters burns? Your life down so she can build hers?" My face. My words. No edits, no spin. People asked if I was satisfied, but satisfaction wasn't the point. This wasn't revenge. This was recognition. It was hearing someone say, "I believe you." It was watching her finally struggle for breath in the fire she lit. It was reclaiming the story she tried to steal and watching the world listen to me. It's strange, the moment after your world changes. You think there'll be fireworks, confetti, a rush of adrenaline that makes you laugh or cry or scream. But all I felt was stillness. Like the wind stopped. Like something had been clenched in my chest for months, maybe years, and finally, it let go. The morning after the live panel, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Emails, texts, missed calls, people I hadn't heard from in months, some in years, suddenly remembered I existed. I always knew something was off. "So proud of how you handled that. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." Where were they when I was sleeping on a couch, praying I could afford dinner? Where were they when my name was smeared across every feed like dirt on a windshield? But I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed to be quiet, not hidden still. I walked to the park that afternoon. No headphones, no sunglasses, just the wind and my breath. People passed me by, some staring a little longer than usual. Maybe they recognized me. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running. The board reached out through a lawyer. The same board that fired me without so much as a second meeting. They offered an apology, a statement they wanted to release together, and, more significantly, a settlement. I read the document 3 times. 6 figures. No lawsuit, no NDA, just silence. Blood money. I took it, not because I forgave them, not because it fixed anything, but because it was mine. What she stole from me, inch by inch, decision by decision, I'd just taken some of it back. Journalists wanted to turn it into a docuseries. One even pitched a movie deal. A part of me was tempted. Let the whole world know. Let them see every second. But a bigger part of me just wanted peace. I agreed to one interview. Just one. A small podcast. No cameras. No glam. Just a mic and my voice. I told everything. Not with rage. Not with drama. Just truth. The kind that sits in the bottom of your throat for months and aches to be spoken. The episode went viral. Millions of listens. But the comment that stayed with me was simple. She didn't sound angry. She just sounded tired. And that made it even more real. That was the point. Because I was tired. Not just of her. Of the way people believe power. The way women like Marissa can wear trauma like a costume. The way truth is only heard when it bleeds enough to get noticed. I visited my old office one last time. It was closed, boarded up. The nonprofit had shut down. Donor trust had vanished. Sponsors pulled funding. Staff resigned. All that remained was a locked door and peeling paint. I stood there for a long time. Not mourning, not gloating, just watching. The place where I gave everything. The place where she destroyed me. Now hollow. And suddenly, that felt okay, because she couldn't wear my name anymore. A week later, she emailed me. A burner address. You win. Is that what you wanted? No greeting, no apology. Just those words. I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. Because it wasn't about winning. It never was. It was about not being erased. I used part of the settlement to start again. Not loud. Not public. I didn't want to be the face of justice. I just wanted to rebuild. I joined a small organization in another city, one that still believed in mission before media. New team. New purpose. No Instagram statements. And when I told them my story, I didn't hide it. I told it straight. No embellishments. No pity. Just, here's what happened. Here's who I was. Here's what I learned. They didn't flinch. That meant more than any headline. Sometimes people still reach out. Strangers, victims, even whistleblowers. They ask me how I did it, how I survived. I never have a clean answer. There was no guidebook, no plan, just rage, silence, grief, fire, and a quiet, gnawing voice that said, "This is not where your story ends." So I listened to it every day until the voice was mine again. It would have been easy to destroy her. I had everything, the documents, the recordings, the headlines. The public was already on my side. I could have sued her for defamation, bankrupted her with legal fees, dragged her through every courtroom and platform until her name turned to ash. But something inside me shifted. Not forgiveness, never that, but exhaustion. Because the more I imagined standing over her ruins, the more I realized I didn't want to be her. I watched her downfall unfold in pixels. The apology posts, the vanishing accounts, the anonymous tips saying she was jobless, aimless, begging old donors to believe her again. Once, I saw her sitting on a bench downtown alone, looking smaller than I remembered. Not sad, not broken, just empty. She didn't see me. I walked past and didn't look back. There were nights I drafted responses, long, surgical monologues I'd post if she ever dared speak again. But I deleted each one. Because every time I imagined her reading my words, I realized she wasn't my audience anymore. I was. And I didn't need revenge. I needed release. So I disappeared, quietly. I changed my number, shut down the burner accounts, moved cities, started fresh. This time, I didn't tell anyone about the old nonprofit, or her, or me. At least not right away. Not until I was sure I wasn't holding my breath when I spoke. I used the last of the settlement to start something small. Not a nonprofit. Not a platform. A single, quiet scholarship. For women rebuilding after character assassination. No press. No fanfare. Just one application question. What story did they try to take from you? And every time I read a response, I saw pieces of myself reflected, refracted, rising again. Marissa messaged me one last time. No apology. Just, I don't know who I am without it. I stared at the text for a long time. And then I typed. That was always the difference. I did. I hit send. Then I blocked her. And this time, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. Sometimes people ask if I'd ever go public again. Tell the full story. Write a book. But I don't need to anymore. The people who mattered heard me. The ones who never will, they were never listening anyway. I keep one thing from the old world. A single photo. Me and Marissa, in front of our first office banner. Arms around each other, full of hope. I don't keep it to remember her. I keep it to remember me. The girl who believed. The girl who didn't know yet what betrayal tasted like. The girl who would rise again. Not because she wanted to win, but because her silence was never the end. It was just the breath before the story changed.